Failure is an amazing thing. Embarrassment is energy. Rejection is something I began to love. The journey of creativity is really unraveling yourself to yourself. And it's through the process of embarrassment, rejection, failure, and you come to that bone bare core of you, is when you're truly free.
Is Lions Live.
Hi, I'm Josy Paul, and I'm here to talk about how to find yourself through advertising and creativity. And I'm going to start with a story, my personal story as a young trainee at Ogilvy. It was my first piece of work that I had to go and present to a large multinational client. And unfortunately, on that day, no senior management person came with us to the meeting. I went with a young account executive. And when we reached there, we noticed that the entire marketing department was there for the presentation, and it was just the two of us. I presented the idea, and they looked at each other and they said, "No, this is not what we expected." I was so stunned by that reaction that something happened to me. I mean, it's like, I don't know, like I just rushed to the window and I stood on the windowsill and I threatened to jump and I looked at that entire marketing department and I said, "You guys are responsible for this. It's my first piece of work and your rejection is like the end of my career, so I might as well do this." And everybody was really shocked. And the marketing guy, the marketing chief, a very kind sort of man, told everyone to leave the room. And then it was just him and me. And he walked gingerly towards me like I'm a crouching tiger. And he said to me in a very sweet, kind voice, "Step down, my son. I love your passion. I know how you feel, and I would feel the same. I feel the same. So just step down, give me a chance. Let me live with this for a bit, and we'll get back to you." Something about his voice felt right, and I stepped down and I left. When I reached the agency, my chief creative officer was waiting at the entrance. I was a bit sort of concerned. Why is he waiting there for me? And he held me by my ear and he took me around the office like a punishment. And he took me to his room. He sat me down and he said, "I got a call from that multinational agency. They've approved your work, but they don't want to see you again." For me, I don't know what happened. That was the first time I sensed, in a way, who I was, who I am. And it was like this need to save something, this need to survive. And it just came from within. But when I think about it, I realize I tried too hard to sell a piece of work. But many years later, decades later, when we won the Grand Prix at Cannes for a campaign called Touch the Pickle, we didn't have to sell. The client bought it. There was an ingredient in that which is all the difference between trying to sell, which I did when I was a young trainee, and today when we didn't have to sell. And between selling and buying and understanding the difference between selling and buying is a lifetime of learning and a lifetime of finding yourself. And that's what this discussion or sharing is all about. So I'm going to share an interesting point in my career. This was in June 2000, and I set up an agency called David, along with Ogilvy and WPP. My partner Madhukar Sabnavis and I went to the Ogilvy board in India and said that there's a need for a challenger agency in the country. Then there was one more thing. We felt that David Ogilvy had chosen the wrong end of his name. Ogilvy is a great name, but David is an ideology. It's forever. And so that's how we began this agency. It was very exciting because we began to attract all kinds of interesting people just by our point of view. And the thing is, when you joined the agency, you had to resign from adulthood. You didn't get an appointment letter, you got a resignation letter. And in the resignation letter, it talked about all the things you have to resign from and accept the responsibilities of a 6 year old. And it was quite funny to see the faces of people when they were signing that resignation letter because it's something nobody had done before, right? And then look at our office. It was like a play school, you know. Everywhere were toys and this happy sort of cuddly things. It was like a Pied Piper's sort of society. I sat on a commode, and when an idea was good, it went into the bathtub, and if an idea was bad, it went into the commode where I sat. And then when it came to new business, we were a bit on the edge. And that's what I'm going to tell you about next. So, the way we won new businesses were very, very sort of different. I'll give you one instance. So, a large company, electronic company, asked us to pitch, and there were a lot of agencies that were pitching for it. And I think we were probably one of the less significant agencies pitching because we were relatively new. And my partner and I were on a flight from Mumbai to Delhi, and we had about 30 pieces of work that we had done over the weekend because I told people we shouldn't spend more than 2 hours on this pitch because we don't know what the outcome is, we don't know how to think and feel about us, so let's just do limited work. So there were, the entire office came together, and there was some 30 pieces of work that was done, and it was delivered to us at the airport. I had not even seen it. I'd just given the early inputs and I'd left that Sunday evening. Monday morning, and we're on the flight. We've got 30 pieces of work and we don't know what to present. So I look at my partner and I say, Naru, do you know what to do with this work? Do you have a PowerPoint? And Naru looks at me and said, I have no idea. I thought you were handling this. I thought you knew. And then we both realized that we were carrying stuff that we had no clue about, and we're going for a pitch. Okay, now, so I looked at Naru and I said, listen, I have an idea. Let me do this. So I stood up and faced the passengers. We were right in the front, not in business class, but in economy. I put my hands up and I said, a lot of people may have thought that this is an hijacking, but it wasn't. I was just saying, I need help. I need help. We are from an ad agency and we are going to meet a client, and we have a lot of ideas and we don't know what is good. We need your help. And it's amazing how people are. So all these guys in the economy class said, "Yeah, we'd like to help." And so I started taking each piece of work and started walking up and down the aisle. Now breakfast was over, and the hostesses were sitting behind. They heard the commotion and they came rushing forward, saying, "What's going on?" And I said to them, again, that we're going for a pitch. I explained what a pitch is, and I said that we are the youngest in this pitch thing, and would you like to help us? We really don't know what's good, and we've got a lot of work. So they said, we'll help you. And then these hostesses walked up and down with our work like a fashion show of ideas, and people began to vote. And from 30 pieces of work, it came down to 6 pieces of work. And I said, no, we've got to get even sharper. So there was another round of voting. And the best thing is, while all this is going on, nobody in business class knows what's going on. And in business class, there were 2 agency heads that were going for the same pitch, but they had no clue what was happening behind. So from 6, it came down to 1 piece of work. And everyone said, you are going to win. We love this piece of work. That came down to 1 piece of work. And what amazing thing happened was, we of course, it was like, again, this spontaneous thing of, what happened to you? Why did you do it? You don't know. You can't tell. It just calls you, right? It just happens. And now you've got this 1 piece of work and you're planning how to present it. And people start approaching you and giving you books and telling you about their situation at home and sharing their personal stories. Like, why? It's like they're all telling you the same thing, which is, we are so grateful to you for making us part of your world. And you realize that that's the way the world is. It's so incredibly beautiful. And when the flight landed, all these guys got up and they waited for us. And as we were leaving the flight, they began to clap. It was like, wow, we're like rock stars. So much energy, and that 1 piece of work and so much energy. But what happened after that is a totally different drama. The company we went to pitch didn't even think we would come. We were so insignificant that they never called us. Till 2 days were over, and somebody said, I think these guys are still around. So we were told that the MD will meet you, but he has no time. He might give you a few minutes. So we walked to meet the MD in his office, and the MD looks at us and says, no sitting, only standing, only 5 minutes. I mean, just think about it. What happened on the aircraft and what you're going through now. You have become irrelevant. I have become irrelevant. And here's a man looking at you saying, no sitting, only standing, 5 minutes. And what happens is when people make you feel that small, something happens to you. And I saw all the faces of those people on the aircraft, and they spoke to me, and I spoke for them. And in that 5 minutes, what I told that managing director impacted him so much that it was as though all his stress left his face, and a miracle cream had made him younger. And he looked at that piece of work that I showed him, and something changed. And guess what? That very second, he looked at me and said, which agency are you from? And I was so stunned. I couldn't believe that nobody had even told him the name of the agency. Of course, something happened after that which I can't tell you guys about. But yes, we didn't just win the business we went for, we won all of that company's business because this managing director saw something that impacted him so much that he gave us not just the mobile business that we went for, but all his brands. An agency that was handling it lost almost an entire flow of business. That's what happened. That's what happened because of that flight. And that's how sometimes you can win a pitch in 5 minutes because of the energy of so many people. I still don't understand it. I still don't know what happened. But I know and see, and I can close my eyes and see every second of those 2 or 3 days that we went through it, even now. And that was the story in 2002. The agency got famous and our work began to get recognized. We won a lot of international awards, local awards. We were called for debates and industry events. And as we began to rise up the WPP ranks, it was decided that David would go beyond India. It was decided that the agency would become an Asia network. It would go into 8 countries, and there would be a discussion in Vietnam on how this network should be. I asked for permission to go to David Ogilvy's castle in France. It's a chateau, and some of you may have heard of it. So I got permission to go there, and I spent a day at that castle. I wanted to go there and feel the spirit and energy of where David came from. And I sat under the tree where he used to sit, where his ashes were buried. And I sat there and I spent the whole day and I wrote a letter to David Ogilvy. And this is what it said when I finally wrote it. It was in the area of to create an environment so fertile that even if you were to sow a seed of doubt, it would flower into something beautiful. And I asked David Ogilvy to bless me so that our journey can become even greater than what it was. And then I took that letter and I folded it and I dug into that area where his grave is or his ashes are buried. And I slipped that letter into that sacred ground. And then I collected the soil in a bottle and I came back to India. And from India, I went to Vietnam, where we had the conference. And there, everybody presented their point of view of David. Everyone made a PowerPoint. And when it came to me, I sort of decided to just talk about my experience at the chateau, at the castle. and what I felt and the spirit and energy that I received and what I thought could be the future of David. Sometimes you realize that you don't need a PowerPoint. You just need to make a powerful point. And that's what happened in Vietnam. It's not that I had planned this, that I'd woken up in the morning and said, this is what I'm going to do. It just writes itself. It's like a calling, and the calling writes you. And then it was decided that, David would merge with Bates, another large agency. I felt something was not right, like something was being stolen from the original spirit of David, and I began to protest. I used to wear t shirts saying things like, just because it makes sense does not make it right. If you mix milk with water, you don't get more milk, you get milk and water, and stuff like this. And these are t shirts that I used to wear, like a soft protest. And people would ask me, why are you doing this? And I said, because I don't know how else to reach out and tell, people that this doesn't make sense. And then people would come and take photographs with me. Like I became the freak of the show, the man who everyone sort of secretly laughed at least I was entertainment. The protest didn't work. And finally, it was decided that David would merge with Bates. For me, something died. And so I quit. That story of how we quit is something else. It's a larger story. It's one of the most beautiful stories. It's very poetic. It's very cultish. Maybe it's dangerous in that sense. But many of us quit, and I quit, and we melted all our awards and we turned them into slabs which said, I am David, and we gave it out to each other. Anyway, so I quit. I failed. Failure is an amazing thing. Embarrassment is energy. Rejection is something I began to love. Failure, embarrassment, and rejection became my friends. I was going through hell. When you lose something, it lives with you, right? It's organic. It's living in your body. But these three friends were with me too, and whatever people say that rejection, embarrassment, failure is something you shouldn't embrace. For me, those guys were the most amazing, people who were with me. Because what they do is they add fuel. They give you fuel to find the next thing, and that's what happened. I got so many offers in that 7 months that I struggled. JWT was very kind to me, and they made me the chief creative officer, but I was restless. And in that restlessness, somebody reached out to me. And that somebody were the angels, the guardian angels who were watching me when I was going through that difficult period. And these guardian angels were the people at BBDO: Chris Thomas, Andrew Robertson, and David Lubars. Chris reached out to me in a very interesting way. I received a book which said the private. I received a book which was titled "The Pirate Inside," and it said "From a Secret Friend." And I was like, "Hey, who's the secret friend?" I tried to find, and then I rummaged in the garbage, and I found the courier package, and it said it's from BBDO Singapore, and that's how I traced it back to Chris. And Chris called me around that time, and we met up with Andrew, and I spoke to David. And the next thing I knew is I was given a chance to set up BBDO in India. How do you set up a great agency like BBDO in India, especially when you've been a reject, when you're going through life saying something's wrong, but things happen to you? It's the it's just the love of the world. It was the anniversary of the biggest terrorist attack that had happened to Mumbai a year ago. And I was approached by a newspaper to do an ad for the anniversary. And I tried very hard to write something for almost a month, but I just couldn't write an ad for a national wound. So I told my partner Raj, listen, I think we not need to go and do something personally. I told him, let's create a monument of sound. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, it's we'll go and chant in front of the Taj. And maybe if we do that, because of the sound, more people will come and join us. And the thing is, I've never chanted in my life. I only knew the word chant. I've never chanted, but something called out to me. And so Raj and I went towards the Taj. On the way, we dropped in at my college, St. Xavier's College. And over there in the quadrangle, there were a few people playing basketball. Some of them were students who were known to me. So I went up to them and I said, listen, I have this dream that all of us could go and create a monument of sound in front of the Taj. And you don't have to build monuments by only putting bricks and mortar. You can build it with sound as well. And it's not that I've done something like this before, it's just a sort of term that I found for myself. And so about 11 students said, this sounds so interesting. So they followed us. I mean, it's like, sometimes you can't explain why these things happen. Why would 11 students follow you? Because you said we'll build a monument of sound, and they did. On the way, we created 1,000 copies of a chant that Sandy had written for us, 2 lines. And I was telling everyone that when we chant, this is not a shout, this is not some demonstration, it's a gentle sort of meditation to sort of, just feel that we are part of this thing that happened. And so we come to the Taj at about 3:30 in the afternoon. It's quite bright. It's hot. All around are security people, NSG commandos. They've gathered there because they know people will come and they know that the anniversary will bring its own sort of action. So we were the first to come and we held hands together and began to chant. And they were watching us. An hour went by and people started milling around. The square was filling up, but the people were watching us, but no one was joining us. This went on. 2 hours of chanting happened, and the students said they want to go home. Nothing is happening. They're not comfortable. And I said, you got to believe. If you leave, you break the chain. We're here for something, it will happen. I told them it will happen. And the truth is, I didn't know. The truth is, I only felt it, but I couldn't be sure. Like, when will it happen at all? You know? But that's the thing. You got to go with this blind sort of faith that something could happen. And sure enough, 2.5 hours later, when we thought it's just not happening, suddenly there is this spontaneous combustion, this electric boom in the air, as though suddenly something snapped and everybody jumped in. The first guy jumped into the circle and pulled our hands apart and joined us. Seeing him, 2 other people joined, seeing them, 4 others. Before we knew it, everybody, 500, 600 people in the square had formed concentric circles and they were all chanting. And the light began to go down and the candles began to come up and television cameras showed up, and then some of our students began to get calls from their parents saying, what are you doing there in front of the Taj? We can see you on TV. And the television cameras wanted to know who started this, and nobody knew who had started it. And that was the plan. We wanted this to be organic. We didn't want it to be about the source. We wanted it to be about the action. And sure enough, 4.5 hours later, we left because the crowd had become really thick. And so we moved out of that entire square. And when we looked back, what we saw was the monument of sound. It was just this beautiful sound that was happening. That evening, we couldn't sleep. Raj and I sat and we spoke about it, our experience. And we said, maybe this is the answer. This is the forces showing us what we should be doing in advertising. And so we decided, and I wrote an article about it saying the future of advertising is about creating acts, not ads. And that's how we we sort of found ourselves once more and found some meaning for why BBDO in India. And the moment we found our answer of create acts, not ads, what followed was just this prodigious amount of work that we never thought we could do. It surprised us. We were doing one thing after another, which was getting worldwide recognition. When we did Women Against Lazy Stubble for Gillette, the world had never seen a campaign like that. Like, how can women decide what men's grooming should look like? But that sort of really broke new ground and won, the most effective campaign award at Cannes. And that was the inaugural effectiveness award. Then we started winning for a lot of our other work. And then finally there was Whisper, Touch the Pickle, which I spoke about before. Another action, another defiant action, asking women to reach out and touch the pickle jar. Something that nobody had thought about. But then we were not even trying. These were gifts that people were giving us, telling us this is what you could do. It wasn't about creativity, it was about empathy, it was about being an antenna, being able to hear people and listen. And we had started moving from, discussing a brief to having a briefing. And we would always say, don't brief us, let's do a briefing session. Because difference between a brief and a briefing is that brief is transactional, briefing is human, it's personal, people are sharing things. There's deep sharing between the client, us, and all other partners. From briefing, we went into something even deeper. We went into confessions. From confession, we went into creative therapy, which is a sort of soul sharing that is so deep that most often people break down when they share their stories about that category. And this is how we started discovering new ways of, working on brands. Then Share the Load happened. We did this campaign called Share the Load for Ariel. It was just our way of questioning society. A lot of our work was really about looking at, things that people aren't talking about. And especially when we say things that people are not talking about, it's things that are already there. We just reveal that. We just sort of bring that out in the open, and people thank us, saying, oh, thank you for saying that. Like in the case of Share the Load. It was about laundry, it was about detergent, but nobody had asked this question. Is laundry only a woman's job? Is laundry only a mother's job? And the moment we asked those questions through different touch points, whether it's film or other activations, it just sort of touched people in ways we had never touched people before. And this campaign went on to become the campaign of the year across the world. And not just once, but twice. Here's an example of that with a case study.
Ariel has been leading the conversation on inequality at home in India. This year, a heart-wrenching film about a dad's apology moved the nation.
अब कुछ सही कर जाऊं, तुम्हारा पापा.
Dad Share the Load got India and the world to think deeper about the issue.
On the BBC World Service, an advert comes along that really captures people's imagination. Well, the latest advert to go viral comes from India, and it's called Share the Load. Sheryl Sandberg, of course, famously has promoted it and told people to click on it.
But that wasn't enough. Gender equality at home had to start with a product. So we launched the world's first odd-even pack. Odd days for him to do the laundry and even days for her. And to give these dates greater cultural significance, we partnered with India's most influential cultural calendar, Karl Nirnai, to get Indians to share the laundry work at home. We added one small instruction to the calendar to create a big difference in Indian home. Dad Share the Load had begun a movement for positive change. Influential children's books came forward and re-scripted their comics to include the values of sharing the load at home. Educationists looked at introducing new syllabus, and designers have developed the world's first symbol for gender equality at home, giving the issue its due importance. All this led to a profound impact on brand and society. Ariel's sales went up by 76%. Consumer engagement increased 4.6 times the highest ever, over 2 billion free impressions, earned media worth over $11 million and counting. 2.1 million Indian men pledged to share the load, and struck a chord with world's most influential agents of change.
You've heard some of my stories, you've seen some of our work, and in all of this, maybe there is a theme, but the beautiful thing is that it's just the way things come and things happen. And you're not forcing anything. And that's the beautiful thing about selling and buying, right? In like I said before, you're not even trying. People are giving you stuff which you then give back to them. And they tell you, hey, you're so creative. And you say, hey, I was never creative. You know, I just heard you and I found something and I gave it back to you. And that's really what we try and do with our work. And often in that process, there's a lot of breaking down because some of the sharing is so deep that you can't help but be affected. There's nothing wrong with breaking down. Very often we find we're short of breath and we can't speak because somebody said something. And that breakdown is good because in the breakdown is when the light passes through, right? And in that breakdown is when we feel there is some breakthrough. And we're not saying that's the only way. That's probably one way. The journey of creativity is really unraveling yourself to yourself. It's through the process of embarrassment, rejection, failure, and all these amazing things that people told you is not what you should embrace, is where you start finding your original self. And when you strip everything away and you come to that bone bare core of you, is when you're truly free. I'm sorry, I don't want to sound like a guru of anything. This is just what I feel, sort of, like I'm saying it. I haven't thought about these things. And you're so free that every day is a surprise. The surprise of not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring, what gift tomorrow is going to bring, and therefore what growth and experience tomorrow is going to bring. And therefore you have something to look forward to.